Section 10.1 is where we're going to be using the Pythagorean theorem. So the Pythagorean theorem says that if you have a right triangle, you can square the legs and add them together, and then that will equal the square of your hypotenuse. So up here in your formula, make sure that you know that A and B are always legs of the triangle, and C is your hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is always opposite that right angle mark. So this little square you see here, the hypotenuse will always be opposite that, so it should always be the longest side. So the first problem we're going to do is you're going to be finding the length of the hypotenuse. So this is actually a picture where they gave you several tiles, but I just did a screenshot of the one with the triangle. So it said the sides are 6 inches and it wants you to find the length of the hypotenuse. So in my formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, the legs are a and b. So that's how I know that I'm going to put 6 in for the a and 6 in for the b, and then c would still be labeled as just c. Then I'm going to start doing my solving. So I would do order of operations and square the 6 on both of them, so that's how I get 36. Then I would add those two numbers and get 72, and then I would need to do the square root in order to undo my square. So when you do the square root of 72, you should get like a really long, messy decimal. So in my calculator, when I do square root of 72, I get this. I rounded to the nearest tenth. So that means I am rounding one decimal place, so I looked at the number behind it. So I put 8.5 as my final answer. Pause the video and see if you can do the got it question. So in the got it question, they give you another triangle with legs of 9 and 12. So I would put 9 in for A and 12 in for B. Now it really doesn't matter the order, so if you put 12 in for A and 9 in for B, you'll still get the same answer. The biggest part is making sure you left C as C. So then I would do order of operations and I would square both of those. So I would do 9 squared is 81, 12 squared is 144, and then add those two and I would get 225. So then to get rid of that squared on C, I would need to do the square root. So C actually comes out to just a nice whole number, which is 15. So what you could do at this point, if you wanted to pause and go work on one of the IXLs, you could go to the 8th grade tab in IXL, not Algebra 1, but click on the 8th grade Math tab and do IXL 0.1, and that is this problem right here. So if you want to go practice that, you could pause the notes and go do that there. If you want to finish the rest of the notes, then we'll move on to problem 2. So in problem 2, we're going to now switch and find one of the legs versus just finding the hypotenuse. So here's my triangle. Notice they gave me a leg, a missing leg, and the hypotenuse. So always recognize which one's the hypotenuse because it should be the longest side or the side opposite your right angle. So now I'm going to plug stuff into my formula. So I'm going to do 5 for A, and again, you could put, I guess they already have it labeled. So 5 for A, and then 13 in for C. Make sure you still put the squared signs even though you plug it in there. So now I do order of operations. So I would have to do 5 squared is 25 and 13 squared is 169. I have to solve for B, so I have to work backwards to get B by itself. So we're going to minus 25 from both sides since it's positive 25. So now I have B squared equaling 144. And then I want to solve for B, so I'm going to do the square root of both sides, which would give me 12. So now pause the video and see if you can do the got it question. So in the got it question, they gave you another triangle. This time they labeled this side with A. You could label that with B, and then 15 is C. So plugging those in, you should have A squared plus 12 squared equals 15 squared. Then you would square the numbers, so you would get 144 for 12 squared and 225 for 15 squared. You would want to subtract 144 from 225 and get A squared equal to 81, and then you would finish by doing the square root, which would give you 9. Now again, you could pause the video and go to the 8th grade math tab in IXL and complete O.2, and that would be all of these problems where you're finding just a leg in a right triangle. If you're finishing the notes, then we'll continue with problem 3. So then the rest of this is, I only have a right triangle when this formula fits for 3 numbers. So when they give me 3 numbers and they ask if it's a right triangle, I have to plug them into this formula and solve it and make sure I get the same number on both sides. So let me show you what that looks like. This asks which set of lengths could be the side lengths of a right triangle. So 6, 24, 25. The biggest one is always my hypotenuse. So I plugged them in. I did 6 squared, 24 squared, and I put 25 in for C. I solved it out and did 6 squared plus 24 squared on my calculator and got 612. I did 25 squared on this side and got 625. These two numbers have to be the same number in order for it to be a right triangle. So I know that this one is not a right triangle. So then I did the same thing for B. I plugged in 4, 8, and 10. I got 80 on the left, 100 on the right, so it's not right. I did C, 10 squared, 24 squared, 26 squared. They both end up giving me 676. So that's how I know that C was the only set that's a right triangle. This is also referred to as Pythagorean triple because they have to only work in order for it to be a right triangle. So now what I want you to do is do the got it question where I give you 3 lengths and see if they fit for a right triangle. So down here you should be plugging them in, and I would do 20 squared plus 47 squared, which would give you 2609, and I would do 52 squared, which is 2704. These are not equal to each other, so no, these cannot be a right triangle because I did not end up with the same number. Okay, so the last IXL that fits this problem is again in the 8th grade math tab, and you would go to IXL O.5. So again, you want to complete those 3 IXLs.